Connor, welcome to episode 9 of We Need to Talk. You are my fourth guest of the year, so you are very welcome. And as is my tradition so far, I ask the guest to introduce themselves in the best way that they feel represents them. So tell
Oh,
the world, who are you? What do you do?
that's a pressure one. Actually, kind of forgot you asked me to do that. Secondary school educator, 7 years experience in secondary school, kind of 8 years experience with an additional after school music program. It's been a main job I've done. I nearly went into a different career, which kind of has given me some skills that I use now and some perspective, which I think is kind of a cool thing to bring into teaching. But overall, that's my job and why I'm here. But we get into other things. But one of the things my friends who describe me of is the guy that can literally come in and tell you he's done the randomest thing the other day and it's just completely normal. There's like 30 odd things I've been like, how did you end up there? Why is that a thing? Which is fun. But for the purposes of work, we're just an educator that teaches I see as a bit of a different way. Not too different, nothing groundbreaking, but my kids do well. And we have a good time. We joke around, which I think is kind of you have to have in the education system.
100%. Because I know when I think back, and we talked about this in a pre call to my favorite teachers, it was the ones that did it a little bit differently and engage with us as people instead of the old school. I have a book, listen to me and write my notes down. So anything that you're doing to improve the experience of kids, to make learning experience a learning experience instead of just sitting in a room getting ready to become a factory worker.
Yes, the
Because
John.
I
It's a
think that's
John D.
one thing you
Rockefeller.
mentioned to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's John D. Rockefeller. He funded. I'm pretty sure it was John D. Rockefeller. I hope I'm not wrong on that. But John D.
I think it was
Rockefeller
Henry Ford.
was it? Yeah, it was
Yeah.
some big American millionaire. But yeah, he funded the school system, and the function of that was to bring out people that would be ready for factories, because that was a function of the time, which is kind of one of the approaches I take. And as I said, not groundbreaking. It's just the way I do it. Some people have said they don't really see it that way, or and it's not a way that other people don't do it. Every teacher does it in their own way, I feel more and more. But it's like, what is the function of education now? Because it's not coming to be to like going to be a factory worker, and that's a huge conversation. There are loads of ways to look at that. And the biggest criticism that you could say is all the teaching in college is like, what's the paperwork of the education of how someone can take in academic content? And they'll have them decide, like, oh yeah, build a relationship, like get to know them. If you're more chatty, I'm like, you're not telling them how to do that. But how do you tell someone how to do
So
that? You
is
know?
that completely excluded from the academic process of becoming a teacher? So everything is down to lesson plans and data points and not teaching you to interact from a relationship perspective?
There's like different ways you can look at it, but the way I see it, and from what I see with the trainee teachers I have now as well, like when I was in college, there was a 2 page back to back lesson plan. So you just had 1 page front and back. And there was all specifics of like, there's different things that are educational theory that you should know when you're going to question and what type of question. There's different things I could say on and on, but we don't need to get into that. But there was like all of these classes of, we'd be like, it's the biggest question everyone has in education college. How do you control a class? How do you go in? How do you keep it calm? How do you like, yes, you're educating, but a lot of it is trying to get that some relationship. And it was just throwaway stuff like, oh, build a relationship. If they know about something, ask about it. I'm like, you're not giving in to a lot of situations that are going to arise in the classroom in a lot of ways. And it's not me saying my way is the perfect way. I know some other teachers that work differently to me, and it still works really well. It's like everyone has their own personality that they have to go in with. But as you mentioned yourself, I think you told a funny story. If you want to tell it, was it a German teacher that was way too strict and you did something like called in her?
I had a German teacher that, right or wrong, we used to call her A for Braun. She may have looked a little bit like a historical figure's wife,
Yeah.
uh, but she really did not gel with me. And she was at a point where she would write down everything I did in class. I'm talking, if we're sitting there and I turn my head to look out the window, it gets written down and reported in my ear head. And she wound me up and wound me up and wound me up. And statute of limitations is probably passed by now, so I'm all right. But I reported her car stolen. I called up the local guard station,
Yeah.
pretended to be the owner of the car.
Yeah.
Somebody told me she got stopped in the road and pulled in by a guard. So success, misadventure.
I will say, as something for a student to do to a teacher, that's pretty high caliber.
It's up there. I mean, there's worse things done, maybe in an embarrassing state to people in the school. Like there was a teacher who now we know that this person had a few neurospicy parts of their brain, but
Neurodivergent, we call them. Is the
yeah,
official
the,
name.
the teacher had been maybe a little bit overzealous with them, and he spit in her face. So, me reporting
Whoa.
a car stolen is probably less of an inconvenience than a student spitting in your face.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's
Um,
true.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
What we'll do is let's dig into more your own personal story to frame
Sure.
what gets you to be the type of teacher that you are.
Mm,
And then the rest we will dig into your experience in the education system, what's great, what can be improved, and all of that.
sure.
But there's a lot more to you than just being a secondary school educator. Because one thing that I will
Surprisingly.
flag you on is you said,
Popular to
I'm just an
our
educator.
as against popular belief, we do not just live in the school, which I feel like for primary school, that's like a huge thing. They're like, Mr. Blitchman, what are you doing in the shop if they live near you?
Like, you're allowed to leave the school. What are you doing?
I
Right.
thought you just got like chained somewhere and slept there at night. Like,
Like, it's mad. The small group program that I run out of the gym, the morning group, recently we had a new lady join who's actually an SNA in a school where more than half of the women in the class, their kids go to her school and she knows the kids by now. Because they're starting to pop it and they're like, no way, that's your little girl. And it's like the
yeah,
most
yeah,
wholesome thing
that's cool.
is
Yeah, yeah,
she's bumped into the kids and she has a kid in the school. The other kids find it mental that somebody's mom is a teacher. I'm like,
yeah.
she's
Oh
a
man, like
person like my mom.
the power you have over a kid when you meet their parent outside of a parent teacher meeting. And it's not just a like, oh, that's Mr. Bridgman, he's my teacher out in the wild. Like, I know one or two of the parents, and if I say out and like, Stephen wouldn't be happy with that. And like, I know their parents by their first name, and they're like, gosh, shit, I can't do anything.
Like, oh, I'm in trouble now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But let's dig into who Connor is, and then we'll build up to who Connor the educator is. So one thing you gave me during kind of a pre-pod notes that flagged to me that I want to dig on is 5 years ago, you were masking and questioning everything. Today, you describe yourself as grounded and proud. What
Yeah.
changed?
Go for it. Just tell the story. Is that
Yeah.
just tee it
Unleash
up?
it. And maybe just a pre-frame before we dig on that.
Yeah.
I've met Connor in a men's work event. We were out at a hike for MRT,
No.
got to hype up MRT. So
Paddy.
Connor is involved in doing men's work, which to me is one of the most valuable things men can be doing these days. I'm assuming part of that journey will be included in this answer.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. um, I don't know how. Well, I do know how in some way. Like teenagers are hugely influential, like those formative years, and I think navigating that is huge. So, one sense, how my early days of teaching, which has just become more solidified over time, was like, what would I want if I was that student? And to put that into more context, I was that student that was like, I was learning music since first year. My family are quite musical on one side, so I was getting really into it. Came into school, but wasn't playing exactly what they were playing. So you're already a bit outside, and then played like water polo. So I was in pictures in Speedos as a 12-year-old onwards. And like, what is this like? You're being different in secondary doesn't actually bode very well for fitting in. So,
Yeah.
like, you're not in a sense of being massively bullied, like you're at decent skill, but there is a lot of people in that situation that get like that. And then I have moments, if you go back, just like definitely a kid that was more sensitive or on the highly sensitive side, or if you hear that phrase kind of thrown around lately. I had a girl I just got with very early on. I was in school. I remember this story. And one of the teachers I got along with great actually was such a sound on Mr. O'Connor. He was like, had this deadly mustache and cool hair, but like an English teacher. And was the English teacher that was like, can I go to the toilet? And he was like, I don't know. Can you? Like, that sort of
Yeah.
stuff.
A
Like,
proper
and
goofball.
yeah, exactly. Like, very cool teacher. Was in there for like 1 or 2 years, but very cool. And this girl I kind of saw for a bit of summer, and we came back. And keep in mind, terrified of girls, like absolutely cannot talk to women, right? So this is amazing to me. And then that ended, right? And I'm in class, like second row back. I can still see him. I can still see the room. It's crazy. Just like it was first class. I got through tutor, and I went there, and just he asked me a question because I have good interactions with him. So he asked me a question. Be like, "He'll have one." And I just started bawling, crying, and it was like this room of like awkward silence. But he like managed it really well. he was like, "All right, cool, yeah, what's that?" And he kind of went on. He was just like, "Yeah, what's is there happening?" And it was like a pulled aside, quiet moment of stuff. So that's kind of one of my experiences of teaching. There was like two or three I can name teachers that were like that. And coming from a space where that was me for a lot of years, and I'm to the point like I'm 31, and I was saying it's 5 years ago that we're in a very bad space, got to like very dark places. I don't talk a huge amount about it, but like we're talking some of the darker places you can go to. Where I actually went to an MRT overnight, not overnight, it was like 2 nights or whatever, and that was where
The
it all sort of
immersive
came
event.
up. Yeah, it was the one in Sligo. Do you remember that one in Sligo, the big circle thing? Have you been to that one? Amazing
I
spot.
haven't been yet. I've only got to see the pictures.
It's very cool, but yeah, I had that for years. Like, couldn't deal with stuff like very in your own head, very questioning yourself because you weren't part of a group. There were always different stuff, mixture of highly sensitive. I think it's a lot of kids, but like navigating that as a teenager is a bit rough. So when I had the teacher like that and couldn't find a career elsewhere, there wasn't nothing that was calling my name. Businessman didn't make sense. Like, was doing okay in school. What I got like 420 in the leaving cert or something, but I tried pretty hard just to get that. So we're not going to any high engineering healthcare job or whatever. But ever since I was playing water polo since I was about 14 or like doing music, I was kind of helping other people learn stuff and picking that up. Like in primary school, I was even doing stuff on a computer for the teachers. They were like, "You were grand at that. Will you do that for me?" And that's fine. So I was all kind of leaning towards that. My mom always goes, "There's a picture," and she has in the kitchen that is just like me in sixth class reading to a third classer. And she was like, "I always knew you were going to be a teacher, but that." So maybe it was destiny, but whatever. And a mixture of this, going to college to get a music and theology and education degree, you end up teaching religion. And I only want the really music degree, and the education means you can be a teacher in 4 years. Where at the time you need to do your undergrad and then you need to do a year or two of like learning to educate. So it was a good deal. I didn't go to get theology, but it was a bit of a side thing. But that's a whole other thing we can talk about later. And coming
Yeah,
out of
that'll
that,
definitely be returned to in a later part of this
yeah.
conversation.
But coming out of that, I ended up adding English in COVID because there's a course you can do, which isn't a full English degree, but they're kind of like you've educated yourself enough in English. It's not a full degree, but you've got an education degree. Put those two things together, yeah, you're smarter than the secondary school kids. So I added those two things, and that's when like my teaching really became solidified because it was a mixture of I was teaching English, and I always did in my lessons with music. It's religion is kind of not exactly factual, but it's just if we know a lot of information, we can get by. I was always, how do you answer this? What's the process for doing this? Because I had to figure that out for myself. I wasn't natural at English, or I wasn't even natural at music. It was just something like I had to break it down so much myself. So for me, teaching is a lot like I need to remember I'm so far ahead of them in their learning stage that I need to actually break this down so much that it's stupidly simple. So, like, if we're asking a question, if it's this question and that's it, there's a framework that they know now because I say it so much that kids would be like, "Sir, I know." Like, all right, cool. Well, then you know. I don't mind if you're annoyed at
Deadly.
me, but like you know it. A mixture of that and then like ways I'll run a class just to keep. Now, is this a bit too much if we're saying we should regulate like the kids and stuff? You know, if they're dysregulated or whatever, there is a space for that with some kids. Um, but there is a lot to be said about like you're not dysregulated, you're just being lazy. Like you're just not engaging. I'm giving you all the tools. Like a speech I give at the start of the year is like, listen, I've proven myself as a teacher. I can get kids to improve. I can talk to you. I'm approachable. I won't be giving out mad to you, but I will be saying if you're not reaching your potential, I will be challenging you. Because there's a thing of like, if they set a bar here and you're here, they'll reach you. But you'd be surprised if I set a bar here for you, they'll go. If you set the bar for them, even
Yeah,
if it is a challenge, I'm
you'll
giving you
raise to
that
the ceiling
challenge.
that you've got.
Yeah. So like, I do a few different things and I do a few different concepts and I communicate those through those concepts while also having a funny thing that I think I mentioned to you of like the days of we know they're well gone as they should be of like, but there is a lot of parents that have kids now that were in the age where you just got smacked. Like you got slapped across the finger, the belt, my dad would the belt, the ruler, whatever. There's loads of different ways. Now that's gone, which is absolutely fair. We're never going back. But at the same time, because they behaved out of fear, a new thing came of like, how are we going to get them to behave? And one of those things is like motivation. But now motivation is so weird because of the fact that like they're so ingrained in all of this. We talked for a second about technology. Like that's where this regulation comes from. And that's where lack of purpose comes from. And my concept around this is like, John Bo Burnham I think I mentioned Bo Burnham to you. There's a American comedian writer, unbelievable. Was big on Vine and like early days YouTube. He wrote a song which I want him to write a Disney movie. Like this is literally a villain in a Disney movie. Perfect song. It's called A Little Bit of Everything. And the whole song is very crude. I wouldn't show it to a kid now. It's very inappropriate. But it's this whole idea of the internet has just broken us because it's displayed as this beautiful place where you can have recipes which cook with your mom. It's all the sweet little stuff. But then it's like drawings of all these characters like doing inappropriate things or like this weird stuff. And the chorus is like, do you want a little bit of everything all of the time? And the whole team is just an evil villain being like, ha, I've got you hooked. And he doesn't even laugh and all these cool things. And I'm kind of go up to them and challenging them and just jokingly calling out how stupid it is that they think their life is just scrolling on a phone is a great time. And like kind of challenging that whole concept of like, what are you doing with your time? Because like if
And
you're here, you
I
should be
think
doing
one
this and
thing
over
you
explaining stuff and like narrating the situation. There's all like silly ways I'll call out, but it's all in the sense of I challenge you to be better in this situation. If you're being a prick for me right now, yes, we can talk about why. And it takes like a month or two to get a class that gets me. But like, the second I start saying like that, right, I'm not giving out, you're not going mad. But I will make you feel awkward as all hell in my classroom until you work with me and we get to what's going on. Because like if I ask you directly, they're just like, oh, I don't know, or they don't talk. So I just make it really awkward for them. And then we do get to it. It does work, but there is some
yeah,
strange times.
that might be the modern day equivalent of the rap on the knuckles that's less violent and actually works.
But then the stories I get out of it are also hilarious. Like, I'll just do one. We don't want to go into for ages, but this is my favorite story of all time. And I was just in a silly mood this day, and like I was in an all boys school, and I'm on the far side of the school for this class. I have Leaving Cert ordinary level English. Now, say what you want about Leaving Cert ordinary level English can be a tough class. As I said, you can negotiate with a lot of classes and get them on your side. It just takes a month or two for them to trust you, and there's a whole thing there. And I've just about gotten to that stage with this class, but they've realised this Friday class. I'm on the far side of the school, like first years. Sometimes first years have questions after class, so just they realise this, right? So I go in, I walk in, boards here where my hand is, and I just see the most detailed drawing of a dick you've ever seen in your life. Like veins, hairs,
Yeah, you
everything,
told me this
like
one.
the foreskin. Oh, it was a piece of art, right? And it's the size of the board as well. And now I'm like, "Oh, what am I going to do about this in my head? But I'm like, I need a second to think. So I pretend I don't see it. And then I go over, like, oh, everyone take out your like books, we're on this page, blah, blah, blah. I'm logging into the VS rated system we use, take the roll. And then I turn around and pretend it's the first time I see it. I'm just like, oh, guys, we're in a science lab. Label your diagrams, please. And they're like, I'm so confused. I took a guess at who did it. I was like, obviously it's not his real name, right? But I was like, Stephen, label your diagrams. And he was like, Sir, how'd you know it was me? And being like, I didn't, Stephen, but I do now. And I literally go up to his hand, like hand him a marker, like, I don't pull him, but I give him a little tug on his sleeve, bring him up to the board, and like, label your diagrams. And they're all like, is he serious? And I'm fully in character. In here, I cannot stop laughing, but I'm fully in character. I go up to him and he's like, what's that?
In your head, you can't breathe. You're like, this is the
Oh,
funniest thing I've ever seen.
how I'm still in character. I should have been nominated for an Emmy or an Oscar, right? And he goes to the board and he's like, what's that, your dick? I'm like, medical term, Stephen. And he's like, you're well done. Now, how do you spell it? And it's just the most condescending teacher ever. And they're like shaft, like testicles, all this stuff. Foreskin, we got foreskin in there. And it was just like educational moment. And I was like, guys, it was not an educational moment. And I just kind of called out, it's kind of a ridiculous one, guys. Like there's a penis on the board, like, and they all kind of went, yeah, like fair enough. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they just took them a minute for it to land. But I was just taking the piss and it was just silly, right, to say, guys, can we not draw dicks on the board? You know what I mean?
And from now on, if you draw anything on the board, I'm going to make you scientifically label it in front of the whole room.
Literally what I do. I've done it in other schools and they've shot themselves and I've been like, no, I'm not drawing that again.
A good way to teach. Um,
Experience.
but let's dig into some of the actual structure of outside of teaching. So I'm going
Yeah.
to throw the ball into your fitness journey because I think that's a space you're probably going to be more comfortable discussing. You've lost a serious amount of weight and rebuilt your relationship with food. Why does regret still show up around your athlete years?
So yeah, water polo player randomly as my parents just couldn't pick me up from learning swimming when I was like 9. And they were like, I knew the instructor and was like, "Oh, water polo's on after." I'm like, "Okay." And then ended
I'll
up with a
jump in and
junior
try it.
water polo player for Ireland for like a few years. So yeah, yes. Like junior water polo, I kind of left before I got to the senior team. So as people were like, "Oh yeah, Ireland," but I'm like, to me, it's like, still junior. But cool. I got like, was it 7, 8 different country trips and like 30 caps, like 6 goals or something like that. So it's cool, but still not senior
Definitely an
team.
accolade worth putting your hand up and being proud of.
Yeah. But you have this weird thing of now I've learned so much about food. I've learned so much about moderation and not eating to like distract from emotions or not eating to just get away from stuff. Same thing with like scrolling on your phone. Because you had a lot of stuff where you didn't feel like you had a secure place. I know my parents are absolutely lovely. Don't get me wrong. They came from like very tough, poor areas, did huge things for me. A lot of people are like, oh, my parents emotional and stuff. I'm like, who had parents that was emotionally aware? Who's our age?
Yeah.
So
Doesn't
you have to
exist.
give them
Don't
props
give
for
you
what they did. They got us to here. They did a great job in one sense, but we now know a thing that they don't. Um, but yeah, so they didn't have that like total vocabulary to be able to get a highly sensitive kid to be like, they tried to see it and like they had their own ways. But for me, it wasn't not say not enough. Let's not go diminishing them in any way. But because of that, I used to eat a lot just because it was like, oh yeah, chocolate would like soothe that sort of thing, you know. It's just soothing to get away from something emotionally when you have either food, people do it and scrolling and distracting now. And to go from that and then regretting, like, I've so much better at food now. I'm the lightest weight I've ever been, uh, or in an exact when I was at my lightest, but like more energy than ever. And I'm 31, and lived done good for mobility, slightly off what my maxes were, but not a huge amount off my maxes. But now I'm like, if I had had that then, there's always like a weird regret of like, but what if someone actually had to show me that? What if my dad was really into fitness and had to show me that? Would have that been an even cooler journey? Because we had this weird thing of I had no problem at the time and it didn't even register me at the time. I'd walk around in Speedos and not give a shit. But then I look back as I was leaving and coming to a stage where because I was eating shit now, very fit, you had youth on your side and you're getting pretty skillful. And for some reason, I'm quite natural to this sport. Um, I was going around in speedos, but like you had a belly, you had stuff hanging out. It didn't feel nice, and I didn't fully register it at the time. So to be able to have a better relationship with food and your body, and then go into doing that, who knows if I would have done much better, you know? So then coming out of
Okay.
that, then I
So the
left.
regrets kind of settle around the what could have been when it
Exactly.
comes to that time in your life.
Yeah, and then that just builds and builds because if you have all those negativities and you don't have someone to, as we say in schools, there's a program or a program kind of an initiative to be like one good teacher where like a kid only needs one good teacher to be able to go to and be like, oh shit, I had this happen and I feel like comfortable and feel seen with them. Not that I didn't have that really, but because I didn't have someone that could model to get me out of that sort of feeling shit about your body, which put on the emotions of feeling shit about your body. Then you feel bad about feeling about your body. And then there's like meta emotions. Or like you feel bad because you're feeling shit about your body, but you feel bad that you feel shit about your body because you don't know
Yeah.
how to get
The
out of it. Then
dangerous
you're
loop.
anxious about how get like it's meta emotions, crazy. Um, but yeah, so we come from that angle, and then we leave water polo for various reasons, and then was still eating bad, but then all of that training is gone. So we shot up in weight, shot up in, especially I hold a lot of it around the waist. I think a lot of guys do. So that went there, found CrossFit and like milked that for ages.
So
And there was like,
let me pull you back on the timeline a little bit so I can see
go
what
for it.
that is. What age did you stop the water polo?
Ooh, it was 18, I think 18. Yeah, going to college.
Okay. So you managed all the way through the
Yeah, yeah,
developing years of having high output activity and eating good amounts of food, potentially
yeah.
too much food. Then how long's the break between stopping water polo and discovering CrossFit?
There was about a year and a half, I think. It wasn't 2 years. Yeah, 2 years. Because I came back from when I lived in Vienna for 6 months. When I came back from that, there was a while there related to that.
Cool. And right from the beginning of you jumping into CrossFit, Did it feel like you were reclaiming your body a little bit from just moving and starting to feel like, you know what, getting some pride in this appearance again, losing some weight?
Yeah, it was cool. So time on me go just before the pandemic. So we had a bit of it where we came into it. So it's my brother's girlfriend that has this gym, and that was the one where she actually got me month's membership for Christmas, and that's how I got into it in the first place. She knew I was basically like, oh, I'm not sure what I'm doing because I've been out of water polo, and she started that a while ago, and then heard me say that, and then brought me that. So that was cool, and then that started it. It was kind of a bit of a yeah, go do that, a bit of like a little nudge in the right direction. And yeah, it took a bit, like to go from and see now, like I've done competitions and stuff. And listen, I didn't do great in competitions, but we did a competition, and
You showed up. That's the first step.
yeah, there we
The
go.
hardest part of physical competition like that is agreeing to do it and actually coming in on the day.
Um, yes, we had that, and then I remember uh, we had weird phases of you have the phase where like you come down a few pant size, like from 38 to 34, and I'm like 30, 31 now. But like come down that's a big thing. And then you come down like being able to do movements is one of the reasons that CrossFit, I was drawn to CrossFit as well. I was like, oh, there's loads of stuff to do here. Like a push pull legs, I looked into it for a bit and I tried it for a bit, but it was also like kind of felt a bit yeah, I'm feeling a bit more here. I'm feeling a bit more in my legs, but it's kind of there's still a lot around here I'd like to get rid of. Like I didn't see the relationship between that and actually losing some fat and stuff. And so that was good. And that was a lot of like it gave you a purpose, which was a huge thing that I try and do if we're going to the education route as well, which we'll go back to. There's a lot of like, what's your purpose here? What are you even doing here? I've said that to a few of them. One line I used to use was, if you're too cool for school, go. And probably shouldn't be saying that. But
It's
I'm also
cheesy,
like,
but I like it.
I'm like, cause some of them, and it's not me insulting them, and I do bring it back to that, I do say that, but I'm like, some of them are decent football players that are like, maybe had a trial for some team, and they just think they're little legends in the class. I'm like, Daddy, that's amazing. But also, if you're too cool, like, you're here. So you do what you do when you're here. Like, if you go off, play for Man City, play for Man United, play for whoever, deadly, cool, I'll watch you. I'll be like, I knew him when. But at the same time, you're here. Like,
Yeah. I
what
mean,
are you
if
going
you're
to do?
here, give it the full effort, but I would also make the argument, regardless of their athletic ability on a sports field, getting a good education while you're there is endlessly useful because they could get an injury at any point. The club they're playing for could dislike them. They could cancel a contract.
There's crazy
They
stuff.
could change their mind and start hating football.
Mm,
If they have something to fall back on, or at least the competencies that school systems may bring, they can finagle that into a business of some kind.
exactly. It's cool. But yeah, so we had that, and then you just had those circumstances where you're coming from to reclaim stuff in your body. But that whole teenage year affected me for ages. A mixture of didn't know what to do, didn't feel like I had a purpose to go and teach. I ended up in an after school program teaching, which I wasn't making much money at, but for some reason it was like something I jump into, but I didn't think about too much. And it was kind of, what would you say, being like an NPC of a non-playable character, or you're not processing anything.
Yeah.
A non-processed character or non whatever you want to call it. It's just
The
some
non-playable character of the
yeah,
world.
exactly. Yeah. So you're just kind of going through the motions. I mean, like, yeah, this will do. This is grand. And I kind of try and call that out for students and be like, what are you doing? And try and get out of that. Cause that's the thing took me forever to get out of. That's the thing, like 5 years ago. It was 5 years ago. I was at the darkest point. About 4 years ago, I went to that MRT thing and everything started shifting. Loads of things happened since then. But to come to where we are now. But to have that and be able to push kids to have that, I've kind of got a load of either books that I read or ideas that I push across to them or things I do, as I said, might be silly things to make them feel awkward, but it gets them quiet and it gets them to actually listen to me and not like ignore me or just saying, yeah, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll do that. And I just kind of feel like, hey, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? A, because like it genuinely could be listen. Like one thing in one school, I say, I won't say whatever, there's some stuff I won't say, but like one kid I heard a mom and dad were having a fight, like physical, the night before. And he admitted it to me. And I was just like, yeah, we're gonna find you a space where you don't have to be around people. And I was just like, we're gonna figure that out. And we'll obviously have to report the whole thing. But like to be able to have someone to go to with that and like that's someone I need to just be like, that's fine. That's the thing that happens. And to get to a point where I process all that and that's such a thing where you're not living in the space of like What am I doing with life? What's the purpose and question and everything? And there's a lot of teachings you can push on them and just say, like, you can say stuff. It doesn't have to be all mad. You have to be up here all the time. Get shit out, especially for boys in education. Like the amount of stuff where like they'll be
Yeah.
misbehaving. I'd be like, come on, this is not
Like,
you.
what's really going on here? What's
Yeah.
causing this behavior? Because it's not that
I've
you want
gen-
to cause
I've
havoc.
genuinely done that before. I put a kid out. This is actually one of my funny moves. I like this. And a lot of mine, they are do work and they're genuine, but they're funny as well. I just take them out of the room and I just look at them. And I'll do that for literally until they say anything. And then I'm like, right, cool. So we're here. You're not completely away with the fairies. You're not going on. What's happening? And that's all I say. And then I just don't say anything until they say that. And I actually do use, if you want this, I actually do use this is actually a relationship technique I learned a while ago in the process of going through all these things that we should learn. Mixture of things. Could we bring this into the education system in some classes because I find it valuable? Have you heard of Imago technique? Like the communication
Sounds
style?
familiar, but let's go as if I've never heard of it before. Break it
Yeah,
down.
so Mago was on one course I was on in another, like some sort of men's group and a few things. And he was basically like, he's not wrong. Like, it wasn't made for this reason, but his reason for it is guys can't get women. Like, we just don't get emotions, which is completely fair. Can't dispute it. But
Yeah. I
it
always
was like
kind of
this.
say we're born with a white belt, women are born with a black belt when it comes to emotional regulation.
Yeah, I will say there's communication stuff that I need to learn as well. And I've gotten to a point where I can slightly do with that. But teenage girls per year gives me something new. But sorry, Imago is so you mirror, you validate, and then you empathize with them. So that's what I'm doing. So like if he goes, oh well, this thing's happening with my dad, or like let's say it's a bullying thing, right? That's pretty classic. Like the things at home you don't hear of as much. It's there, but you don't hear of as much. Um, it's like yeah, well, like he said this to me thing, and it usually comes out with a bit of anger. He said this thing to me earlier. I'm like, oh yeah, so like you were playing football, and he said that thing, and that was that. And don't say out enough. Like literally just repeat nearly word for word what they said. And the amount of kids that will just come out, yeah, but then that and they just rant. Because you're not asking what happened. You just repeat something back and they'll want to clarify. They just want to clarify. They just clarify. And then you can kind of be like, oh, well, like, man, like that makes sense. I mean, if you did that, and like that's the just validating bit. You're saying like you're not irrelevant. That's not something you shouldn't feel. It's not that. And you're just like, well, if he did that, like, I mean, I imagine that made you feel that, and you're kind of gotten to the point of leading them to what a feeling is, and then what they might do about it. The kind of boy thing is like, how do I fix this? Like, they can't sit in
I'm
their
just going to
emotions.
batter him after school.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to stop, Matt.
Yeah, that would be my my old school solution to all conflict back in school days. We're like,
Yeah, yeah,
let's
yeah.
have a
And
straightener, and then
I
let's
do
be
have
best
to
friends
switch
after.
that. And then I compare it to be like, yeah, I know, I'm punching him in the face might feel good at the time. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, no.
Yeah,
It's kind of,
uh,
it's just a way of
that's one we might
communicating.
be able to have a discussion on because it's one. Obviously, in the modern world, we're trying to school young and old men to not fix all the problems with these, but I find it difficult to let go of my old view world that I've experienced. That every single person I've ever had a straightener with, I can probably call them all right now and be like,
Yeah.
"I'm in trouble. Can you come up and we sort this out?" And they're like, "Yeah," and they'll hug.
Yeah.
And like everyone I've ever had a straightener with, I could still call them a distant best friend, my
It's,
actual best friend who doesn't live in Ireland anymore. We've
yeah.
had two straighteners,
Yeah.
and both of us would kill an army of people for each other.
It's the weirdest thing. Like, I know there's that line of like, men are so simple. And like, and when they hear this, people are going to be like, no, we're not. But like, that is not uncommon. It's more of a primary school thing, I will say. I've heard it, or like middle secondary, by they get the fifth or sixth year or fourth year, it's different. But I literally, there's a kid I know, not from teaching him, but just another one. And he went into school and there was a whole thing, he had a scrap with a lad, and then someone else jumped in, and the person that jumped in and the lad that fought with him, they're like best mates now in college. Like
Like
it is
it
this weird thing.
happens.
It is this weird thing to navigate, and the thing that I think is hard in different ways is how do you sort that as a principal? Because, or like, how do you sort that as a disciplinarian? So if you want to get into phrases like a disciplinarian, or authoritarian, and a teacher or an educator, like disciplinarian usually goes to your head and stuff. I don't like to be the disciplinarian. Like I'll do it, but I don't like to do it. In
You
those
prefer to stay in
situations,
the educator space.
yeah. So You want to be a disciplinarian as little as possible. So this is a concept I actually learned from a camp in America I worked in. Bob Seger. Do you know who Bob Seger is?
The singer?
Yes, Bob
Yeah.
Seger played songs with Bruce Springsteen. His daughter ran the camp. I got
Cool.
lucky. I don't know how. She's very cool camp, very cool people. But they had these ideas because their camp was highly linked with like people who were childhood psychologists, the people who started it. So there was unbelievable like ideas of how to work with kids. And one of these ideas was you always want to have money in the bank with a kid, but you're going to have to withdraw that money in the bank at different times. So build it up because you never know when you're going to have to withdraw money. That's the thing where you have to call out a kid because, as we've just said, kids might have a scrap and they'll be teenagers and it might look like they hate each other. But if you get into that, that was just trying to express something and that could have expressed it. And now they could have been like, yeah, right, man, I guess that was all right. I can't even imitate how teenagers talk now, but you know, the
Yeah.
14-year-old that just figured out he hates his man, he has a crush on a girl, but he doesn't, that sort of voice. Yeah, so like if they do fight, there's a few things we can do. And is it like that we suspend them? Like, oh, it's kind of a process to let them go through. Like it's a regular thing we've seen now that it's happened enough times. Let's pull them in and like, right, what is it about? Why are you doing it? What's going on? They both did it. Listen, you did this. This is the consequence. But if you can sort it out, that'd be grand. We don't want to have a fight again. Instead of just going, oh, you get out. You done fighting here, because it'll
Yeah.
happen. But the process after it, and weirdly, that I end up talking about, like I've looked into a lot of stuff now because I'm trying to, you sort to yourself to be securely attached if you want to go to the relationship space. I'm nearly just trying to be like a weird parent now, trying to get kids to be securely attached. Because I'm also like, if we have an issue, now in relationships, we shouldn't be ever hitting each other, right? But like if you have an issue of lads fighting in the school and they fight and you bring them in, like this was the rupture, like of a relationship, we disagree on something, we fight, whatever, maybe we didn't mean to do it. What happened? What was the emotion? Why did that happen? And can we go and make it not happen again? Sort of side of it is a big thing. Like, and then we balance that with some
Yeah.
humor. We balance that with some, well, listen, we can do better next time. I think is a huge
Uh,
thing.
I think it's essentially impossible to make it where young men don't at some point get into a scrap with each other. But as you said, the improvement to that situation is the ability to dissect it afterwards and make that repair so that the same scrap doesn't happen again and that the people are maybe able to understand the emotions they didn't process that led to them just going, I'm just going to batter him.
That's good. That sounds like someone who's battered someone before.
Maybe a few times, not in
Yeah,
a long time. Any guards that listen to this.
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can actually recount the last time that I hit anybody,
You've been
like
in that league outside of
outside
MMA,
of
right?
like any, there was that back in the day, but the
Yeah,
last time that I got in any level of a street fight, I think was about 11 years ago, which is pretty good for like, I'm 33, it was a good while ago, maybe even a little longer, 12, 13 ish. There was a girl that I was dating, and I don't know if you remember a nightclub called Alchemy that used to
oh yeah,
be in Temple Bar.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we're in there, and I have my arm around her at the bar, and some
Beautiful.
dude puts his hand on hers, and she doesn't move. It was a very toxic relationship. It didn't work out in the end. Happens to be the only girl that ever cheated on me.
Oof.
But I'm my arm around her. I see that. I grab him and I shove him one hand, and he goes back. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he's carpers. So I think nothing of it. I'm like, "Grand, sorted." Then I have a word with her, going, "Why did you not move his hand?" Oh, like, it was a whole other thing to repair with her that never was going to work out. But we finish with the nightclub. We leave. I know where the Londis is on Westmoreland Street.
Yeah.
We're standing at that corner, and I see the dude holding hands with a chick, but
Oof.
he doesn't see
Okay.
me. So I just tap her and go, "Sorry, love, who's this fella with you?" And she's like, "Oh, that's my boyfriend." I'm like, "Is he?" Because he
Easy
had
now.
his hand on my girlfriend's ass an hour ago. And he's, "Oh, shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up." And I was like, "Shut up, get the fuck away from me now, or else
Yeah.
shit's gonna pop." And
Yeah.
he did not leave, but he did hit the ground. And then my now long ex is like, "We're gonna get arrested." I'm like, "We are if you don't shut up. We have to leave."
Love it. You
And
learn from
I've had a lot of
experience.
emotional growth since then.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We're not the same people.
Yeah, there's different parts of life, and in theory, martial arts should have taught me to not do things like that. There's a longer conversation that we've had around my sobriety and all of these things where I don't make bad decisions like that anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
I talk things
That's
down
one
and
that, so like if you want to summarize it, because I could talk on this for hours, but there's a few different things I use to try and get the kids to like step up to be like, let's say a virtuous, or let's say like a moral person in some sense.
To have the moral integrity and fiber in check.
Exactly, yeah. But there's like this weird thing of, as you said, that experience just there, you learned a lot from that experience. But like we learn through experience as well. Like they're gonna make mistakes. But where can we play that in education? And put that in and let them know that and see that. Because there's a lot of now, which is like they see YouTubers and they see all this stuff, and half the time they come into us being like, what do you know? And I'm like, oh, more than you, mate. But at
Like
the
I've had
same
the
time,
lived experience, pal.
when they come into me and like I challenge this all the time, oh sure AI can do that. Well, like is AI gonna live your life? Is because I'm like, right, because like if AI does everything for you, you're not even a person. Like you're just an extension of a robot, which is weird. So like I try and put challenges in front of them, and if there's lads that are a bit angry or a bit doing this, even if they're acting up or just talking, I genuinely go to them, and they actually think I'm giving out to them the first time I say it. I'm just being like, "What are you doing here? What's that? Why aren't you doing that?" And I'll just put in either narrating what's going wrong and just keep talking. It's almost the opposite of the staring at them and don't say anything. It was like just keep talking to them and say what they're doing, and I'm like, "Does that make sense?" And they either like, "Yeah, I'll do it. Go away," or either they sort of have come up to me sometimes and like, yeah, I see what you mean, or I get it. And so in both ways, I kind of get the result I need. So they're working on my class as they should be, or they do sort of see a perspective. But I don't see them that much. Like secondary school, we see them maybe 40 to 180 minutes of the week, like depending on what your schedule is. And it's a push. It's all I can do. And like everything on education is like, what can I do now? Because I can tell you loads of stuff that's wrong with it. But like, we don't need to do that. Let's go down the road of like what can we do? What's in our within our power? Give ourselves some agency, and we can if we live push them. And I'd love to push. I don't know how you'd actually put it in place, but I'd love to push even the idea of like the four agreements and the golden mean of Aristotle is kind of two things I keep in mind. I like those sorts of things of just being a good person, how to navigate the world, how to show up properly. Like, because if education isn't, we're training people to be able to, let's say, be good communicators. Because let's say I couldn't make this call today and I just didn't make it and I just didn't say anything to you. That's pretty disrespectful. That's something we shouldn't do. But if we're going to students who are like putting stuff in late and not saying anything to us, or when I've done basketball with students and they just don't show up and don't tell me and they're like, yeah, just didn't want to go. I mean, like, if you do that in the future, you could get fired. Like, you know what I mean? Or
Yeah,
people will hate you.
civil.
And I'm just like, if we're not educating like for them to communicate well, for them to be able to be competent, and you'll have TYs and stuff. And listen, TY is what TY is, whatever you want to make of it. But I'm sorry, if you're in a class and you don't show up with a pen or a page, I can't do nothing for you, pal. Like, and I'm meant to help that. Like that's a you thing. You're not being competent right now. That's literally a phrase I say to them. Is this a competent person would do right now? And they're kind of like, what? I'm like, you're not being competent right now. It's not an insult. It's a challenge. Because I don't like this
Yeah,
idea of just give stuff to them. Now I do sometimes if I have to, but sometimes just like yeah, just sit there and do nothing. But I don't have it, and then I'm just like, well, that's the problem, isn't it? Like you could have solved this so easy. Like if just bringing in a pen is impossible to you and you're 16, you're 2 years off possibly being someone who's in a job that's responsible for a lot of stuff. So it's weird. I think we should push for those ideals nearly in a report, or could I put on a VS as our system for recording behaviors and everything? Could I put in like three traits and give them a rating out of 10? Like communication. Because one of my lines is, I don't know if you don't know. So, like, if I'm saying stuff, and I have loads of breakdowns for it, I have loads of process for it, I have loads of frameworks, I have loads of infographics. But if you're there, you're either not doing it because you're choosing not to do it, or you're not doing because, like, you don't get it. And this one I don't mind. I don't mind if you don't get it. I'll repeat everything 50 times if I have to. But, like, if you're choosing not to do it and you have all the stuff in the world, man, you've no idea you could go to so many countries that don't have an education system that are building schools that could not be more excited to walk in and have a teacher in front of them. And I'm like, and you're here and you're like, oh, you don't do it. And not that it's like you always have to be doing something. Obviously, you have emotional problems, you have stuff in your life. I'm not dismissing all that. But I think we shouldn't have to dismiss that. And like, you're not being competent right now. You're not being productive right now. And like, whatever. Doesn't mean they have to be robots. Like, they have a personality. Hell, I joke with them sometimes to the point of sometimes they pull me off the half the class is gone. Now I'm giving out to them that they tricked me, which is fine. It'll happen. It's part of the process. But it's a real thing. Why aren't we judging them off that? And then the results they get in the test, which is what? if they have to go to college is what's important. So you have your personality. We'll probably go personality. Are they competent? Can they navigate the world? Can they communicate? And then whatever the test is. But I feel like all the things you teach in education college is like, let's just get them to that test. And then everything else kind of,
Yeah. It's a race to a finish line to say, can you get the accumulative points that you need on this one exam just so that you can enter into college for the thing you think you want to do right now when you're 16, that maybe when you're 22 and you've done the course, you may definitely not want to do.
yeah, which
It's,
in itself isn't great, but we also need a system to get people as well. Like, do you really want someone that hasn't
yeah.
done 10 years of college to be your doctor? Like, we want people to
Oh,
get through that system to be
100%.
good.
We need
But
the
at the
system.
same time, yes, you should maybe look into it a bit more, take things a bit more seriously so you don't do a 4-year degree and realize you have to go back and do another 4 year or you have to change. But if you do, life is life, and a lot of people do that now.
Well, what I'm going to pivot into is digging more into actual system of school. Let's talk about what you see as the best parts of the Irish education system. Because rather than us dig into negativity, let's go into the best bits of what's being done well. Let's say even compared to when you were a student yourself. What's improved that you're like, I'm glad we did this.
I think the best thing about the Irish system, to be fair to the people in it, there's a lot of weird stuff in it that's been pushed on us. But the amount of time a lot of teachers will give to people, and a lot of teachers will give, like, now I had a few that I connect a bit more, but when I see it from the other side, there's actually so many teachers that are brilliant. And this is some of the rare stuff as well. I couldn't be the teacher. And you'll probably agree with this. I've said this to people, and I don't take it as an insult. But there was a teacher I had, amazing woman, she's incredible. She taught my brother as well. But everyone as a student is terrified of books. Let's go to
She's just a
results.
complete authoritarian, she
But
holds the room type.
Miss gets results. Now she's in an all boys school, and she would get results, but she kind of went in with the idea that, like, they're boys. I'm a female teacher. They might try and go like but like she will get results, an amazing person. But then she walked into the staff room when I started working there, like slagging and stuff, and I'm like, "You're amazing. Like, this is brilliant. This is what we need." Like, now it wouldn't work for me. Like, if I shouted, the class would laugh. Yeah, like, it's not me. It's not my personality. And that's why I'm saying as well, you can't go to, it's hard to teach this in college, like how you work with a class that makes you work. There's strategies, but Miss had that way. And it wasn't that she was always shouting, always giving out. She would just be, make sure we get that done or I'm in your face. And it's a way of it. It's basically what I do, but I do it slightly differently. And as I said, got results, amazing teacher, amazing yearhead. She has kids, amazing parent. She's brilliant. And that's an interesting thing of, like, a lot of that is what the education system is. And there's a lot of like leaks going through places that could be better. I don't want to go down the negative path, but to be fair, they are trying to do a lot of extracurriculars. One of the big things I think we should do, and it's like, say what you want about money, right? I do think you should be paid for it if you do it. But like, if we go back to, what would you say? If we go back to like what was really good about school stuff, it's like a lot of extracurriculars are those funny times that you remember. And like, I think mixing, being able to prepare students in the chaos of organization of a school is quite good, because the system can be crazy, but teachers have a lot of good time for it. So it is a lot of people in it. But then, well, I phrase it in the book. There's a book called, do you ever heard of the book, The Escaping Flatland?
No, can't say I've heard of it. Is it
No,
something to do
I
with
only
flat
heard
earth?
of it the other day. I only heard of it the other day. And it's this idea that um, everything is based on data and statistics, and if you are very set up for that, you're very flat. You don't really have a life experience. So flatland is this place is 2D, and then this 3D bubble comes and start expanding, doing all these things, and you just don't know what's happening. Like, it's a complete, like, no idea.
Is it like it's a novel?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I've only seen like the synopsis of it. I literally on here the other day. I think it was Chris Williamson as well. Obviously, the guy that gives, like,
The
is
guy
like the
that
modern day
inspires the
philosopher that
activities
just
I get up
takes
to.
other stuff and gives it to us. Um, and it's this idea that um it's the experiences. So it's the novel experiences. Like, spirituality will be one of them with yours. That's one of the points of it. Like, you get rid of spirituality, you get rid of community, you get rid of these things, you kind of lose a purpose and you kind of lose other things. So, like, extreme sports, drugs, drink, fights, all of these things come from being replaced with that. So I think the fact that schools are very good at trying to all the time to be like when I was in school and I played water polo, even though they were like, oh man, all the announcements, yeah, water polo team, Captain Connor, whatever. Like they're always trying to big up people like that. There's like even as down to far as the less sporty like Lego clubs, debating teams. There's always trying to find that group in that circle. If you wanted to do a thing as a government, like fund that. Like don't
Yeah,
make it
great
just
funding for the after school
private
program.
schools. Even like they have well-being hours, have it like during school hours that they have to go to one and just set that up because that's kind of the main things. And don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of like the corrections pretty well. Results are going up in a lot of schools. I think it's down to a lot of diligence of people trying to push that idea. I'm not the only one that has this. This is how you mark. This is how you understand a question. Like that's pretty common. But then people are doing that well enough that you do have a lot of kids that are shooting pretty high. So whatever is in the structure or how teachers are pushing information in Ireland, and the Leaving Cert is a well respected like educational framework. Like when you go abroad, if people know you went through the Leaving Cert, they're like, oh damn, yeah, that's
Well, this
high
guy's
caliber for
competent.
you. Um, so I think in that sense, it's tough, but at the same time, it's not meant to be easy, you know. But the fact that they push people through and there is a lot of negotiation, but can we get them to hear what's high for him? Now, parents push back on that, but overall, I think that's quite good, and with the people there doing good things, you could say a lot about the other things in the structure. I don't think a lot of it will change. We'll try and we're saying stuff and it's not really changing. So what can I do and how can we push these
Is
people to be the
there
best they can be? It's kind of
is
down
there
to
anything where
navigation.
you think the system is failing dramatically in any aspect, and is there like a solution that you would present for that area?
Mm. Um, it's a tough one. Obviously, you've got a lot that can come into that because one sense, we'll go to sense is very present and the sense that I think needs to be called out more. You've got a lot of kids that do have a lot more of your like special educational needs, additional educational needs, the phrases that we use from. That can be autistic, that can be
Like
ADHD.
additional educational needs is the way that we title
AEN
it.
or SEN or shorthand, but I want to clarify them in case you don't know them. Yeah, additional educational needs and stuff. So if they have them, there needs to be a space for them that needs to be catered for and stuff. And I don't know if you heard the SNA thing. I think it's been paused, but there was talk about reducing the SNAs in some school and giving them to other schools because they need to spread them out or whatever. It's like taking funding. But then at the same time, there's been few people on social media as well that where they are very advocates of people who are SNAs or have a kid that has an SNA and how powerful they are with them. I think they have a huge presence in the school and they do a hell of a lot. In some schools I've been in, I'm like, if I didn't have you, like this kid will be gone mental. Like absolutely. And to have a space for those people, this is the navigation that's tough. And this is the one that they need to get is you've got those kids which are like in this 50% say, and they should absolutely have that. But then at what stage should they have their own class and should they have their own building and should they be all in the same place and get to know each other and have that be a calm space? That would be an amazing thing. If you had kids that were all severe autism and in one place and that was just the norm, like that would be so cool for them because like, oh, that's him and he does that. And it would be very accepting. And that'd be great. Then they're being pushed in other schools and that's fine. But then you've
Because
got the
that actually happens in the school that I went to. So in Portmarnock, and I only know
yeah,
this because I remodeled and managed the gym that's beside the school I went to in secondary school.
then
And there was a woman that was coming in training at this interval of time. And one of the days, you know, how it is in gyms, you might talk to somebody and go, oh, what do you do? And she's like, oh, I'm actually like head of an S&A program in the school across the way. And I'm like, no way, I used to go there. What are you up to? They actually have a whole separate building built at the front of the school
yeah,
for all the kids that are with
amazing.
those additional needs,
Yeah,
where the classrooms have been put together in a way for the different sensory needs, different methods of education that's in it. So I'm guessing this is happening at an individual school basis if a school is able to fund itself or if they maybe get an experimental funding program from the government. But I thought that was pretty cool that it's existing already. And she kind of said they're already building on it. And there'd be things like taking some of those special needs kids out of that environment and bring them over to the pool, which was really close. It's like a
yeah,
2 minute
yeah.
walk from the school. My only question was to her, do they then go down and interact with the rest of the school or are they now an isolated population? But you can't have everything perfect.
Yeah.
There's damned if you do and damned if you don't.
It is an interesting thing. Now it's more in the case of how severe because the point I'm leading on to is where's would you call it a glass ceiling, or where's the line? Where do we draw the line of what severe is really? Because there's kids that, and it's hard for the parents to accept if they have an autistic kid as well. Like, if you have a kid that's kind of bang on in the middle, they're not severe, they're not here. Yes, we can have time for them, but an SNA would be essential because they need to learn a lot of these navigations. They'll process slightly slower, probably. They won't get social cues, and we need to constantly remind them because they need that constant reminders. But I have a mate who's a amazing mother. Her dad's really cool as well, deadly couple. And they have a kid that got diagnosed with autism, and they get all the stuff. They fight for all the stuff. They make sure they gets everything. But they were always like they push her because she's really smart. But then in these situations, she just panics like mad because of what's going on. And but they're very involved and they're very on it. But you can get some amazing people because of it. But it is a harder journey. So like being able to like recognize that, but actually have someone that is their full time job just organizing that, and they don't have to teach whatsoever, which is weird because a lot of people get into teaching, like even principals were teachers at one stage. So you don't get someone like goes principal right away. So if you had someone like that, and then on the other hand, you have a weird thing of, I forget what it is exactly, and it's annoying me that I forget it. But if you have some people that get certain diagnosis, they get like extra, not extra time in exams, but I forget what it was, a percentage or something.
Yeah, I
And you
definitely
have
wanted to ask you
people
about that because we
and
talked
they
about
have
that briefly in the
people,
pre-pod.
this was a known thing, I'm not gonna say where. So a known thing, if you went to this person, they'd sign off a form and get your kid to fail an exam, and then they would have benefits to make them get a better situation in the Leaving Cert. So you have weird stuff like that. What I mean for those people is I would love to have them just challenge themselves to be like better and go forward. We have a lot of kids and they're not autistic or they're not that, but I don't like the phrasing of someone say I get distracted in the middle of an assignment or something. I don't do assignments anymore. I'm not going back to college, but say I do, and they're like, "Oh, that's my ADHD," and I'm like, "What are you talking about ADHD? You're just distracted right now." Like,
I actually did a workshop a couple of years ago with a guy that does, how do I put this? There's two sides of his business, and he does this inside businesses to educate on mental health awareness. He's got a suicide prevention and addressment workshop, which is like really heavy. But attached to that, he has mental health within the workplace, kind of an understanding of language and what can and can't be said.
yeah,
One big flag that he tries to teach in as many workplaces as possible is to not use diagnosed terms for behaviors that you just have. So a kid
yeah,
being
yeah,
like,
yeah.
"Oh, that's my ADD." In a workplace, that can mean if someone's like, "Oh, I have to line these pens up because of my OCD," when they don't have it, the person that actually has it then feels like, "Oh, I can't talk about my issue because it's a joke."
Exactly. And like, it's having a space. Like, this isn't a thing about fun, but it's just an attitude to it. Uh, it's like having other kids step up to the plate. Because, like, those kids have stuff that there's a lot going on up here that we can't process. As a side note, there's a VR thing. As the amount of random things I've done, I made a VR game once. But there's a
Really?
VR game where you get to experience what it's like to be an autistic kid. And the whole
Right?
process is you going to a supermarket or like a really like Stephen's Green shopping center with your mom, but it'll constantly feed you what autistic kids would feel. And then you're just going around, like your vision goes, you're blurry, you hear all this random stuff in your head, and then like your task is to like do all of these things. And you're just like, it's so much harder. Like it's so much harder to navigate. So all of those absolutely deserve this help. We've got a lot in the middle that, like, if you're a parent, and to me, like you parenting in schools, it's not like we talk a lot. There's like a parent teacher meeting if you call in and you call us. But it's kind of a weird thing. We're nearly like, if they're calling in, like, what are they calling me for? It's kind of a thing. There's nothing going on with their kid, really. It's tough because we don't have more work to communicate with them. But at the same time, there's more stuff you could probably do as a parent than you think. Like in the small sense, just as I said, being a competent human, we have laptops and one or two schools I've been in. We've had iPads, we've had laptops. But then a kid will come in and be like, "Oh, I forgot my laptop."
Like, I
I'm like,
guess I'm gonna do nothing today.
yeah, I just do nothing. So like, mate, I forgot my like voice today, so I can't teach. Like, what's that? You know,
You're like, "Here's a
it's
piece of
simple stuff
paper and
like
a
that.
pen, catch up on what you can."
Yeah, exactly. And then I remember when I was in school, I broke my wrist. Was a wrist or something? I couldn't write. So they were like, "Oh, write with your left hand." All right, fair enough, whatever. And I did
Well,
it.
we'll
It was
try it.
ugly. It was ugly. 2 weeks, grand, it was gone. But then in school now they give them a laptop. I'm like, I get if you have laptops maybe, but like it's only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Right with your left hand and catch up. Like, stuff happens. And I just think that's a side that they're kind of catering to the kid too much. And there's that side of kids that are actually grand, but like they're also teenagers. I'm not gonna go mad at them for trying to be a teenager. Like, dude just figured out he likes girls and that girl is attractive to him and he's nervous as shit around her. I'm like, what am I gonna do? I'm
He's
not
gonna
gonna be
do
like, hey,
some
what are
weird
you
stuff.
doing? Yeah. And then like I've got one kid who was in whatever year it was, I think it was a year ago or something, in my class, and then he's obviously like upset and all, and I was just like, I've got banter. A lot of my classes are like they're grand, but I went over to one girl that's really chatty in this class, lovely girl, very mature for her age, and I was just like, I knew they were mates and stuff, and I was just like, hey, what's up with, like, obviously never a kid's real name, I'd never shared this information anywhere else, but like, what's up with Stephen there? And she goes like, oh yeah, like just like. Um, I'm gonna send you two on a job. Will you do a thing for me and just tell him these one or two things? And all I was saying was just like, the breakups happen, but it's like, what did she do? What did you do? Make sure you don't say lower your self value for this. And I just said some simple things of like, don't hate on yourself and just take it as a learning experience. But to come from me, that might have been really weird. But I made up an excuse to just be like, do that for me. And he was like, what? I was just like, oh, I just do that. And it's TY, like, so we can do that. And I was just like, yeah, do that. And then it was just like, just have him go do that. And I'm just like,
That's
that's sort of the switch.
that's quite a full circle moment, being that earlier in this discussion, you flagged that you went through a tough breakup, had to sit in a class, got upset and cried. Teacher came over and gave you some holding space, for lack of a better term, for a moment. You were then able to navigate and see, oh, okay, that's what's going on with this kid. Let me do what I would have liked to receive at the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You have become your own hero.
Yeah, it can be. And it is what it is. Part of the reason I got into it. It's cool to be able to see that and try and help out and have someone like feel that sort of thing. But it's always that navigation. Like, as I said, I'll mention it. If we can go on it, the golden mean of Aristotle is like getting a bit nerdy here if you want to go that way. But like
Break it down. We
Aristotle
love a bit of nerdy philosophy around here.
Like Aristotle's whole, not whole thing, but a lot of it was on virtue and virtue ethics and stuff. And he had that idea of the golden mean. So if you're talking about a golden mean, you've got the thing in the middle, which is what you want, because that's the thing that's going to make you productive in life. But let's say we're guys, it always comes back to are you going to approach that girl or are you going to do that? So if you're in the middle, you've got the courage to approach that girl and see what happens. If you're on the one side, you're not even going to go near it because you're like, holy crap, that's going to go bad. I am shitting myself, whatever you're going to do like that. On the other side, it's just like, oh yeah, and you're going to be one of those guys that like touches her ass while like maybe being real brash. Maybe I'm dating this girl, maybe I'm doing that. You're like totally on the wrong side of the edge and being irresponsible. And I was like trying to find that like golden mean of things. I don't know if it's like we look back and like, could kids regulate themselves before we really talked about regulation? And would someone have done that back in the days of when you could hit a kid? Would they've gone, here, what's up with him? Actually, he's not feeling great, just stay out. Or would he just be like, oh, get in the zone? Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing? But
Back
then,
in the day, an emotionally dysregulated moment was probably getting you a clatter across the head.
yeah.
If
And
you were
it's like,
lucky, it was more likely an arse or a hand.
if you were to ask me, if we're talking about changing stuff in religion, and if you want to go segue, because I think you said you want to talk about this, in religion of classes that I have, I've switched it from like, there is literally, and I can ask the kids this, like, we're just covering random stuff to pass the time. They are so checked out of it because it's like we're in fifth or sixth year, we're doing non-exam religion, and we want to just do our studying. So, is there a problem there that we're disconnected from something that was the most influential thing to ever happen to Ireland and the whole world? I don't know, but like, is it weird that we're also just occupying them and accepting this? Um, it's strange. So it's a strange negotiation. So the way I get around it, if you, do you want to go, or will I say what
Yeah,
I got to do?
let's frame the religion bit. So
Okay.
I wanted to talk about a rumor because I've heard a rumor that they're going to remove religion from school in Ireland in both primary and secondary. I don't know how true or untrue that is, but using that as a thought experiment, I'm going to ask you the question that if religion were removed from schools tomorrow, what would we gain and what might we lose? And this
Big
is
stuff.
really specific for you, being the part of your education is in
Yeah, yeah.
theology and religion.
Yeah. It's so there's a few ways to look at it. Um and there's like one in school and one outside the school. If we're talking outside of school, Well, let's go in school first. So if you're in school and you take away religion, there's a lot more of a timetable. What would you put in with that timetable? So you could say maths, you could say other things that are a weakness of, you could say other things. So in school, that's kind of like you would gain more time and stuff. Now, in a sense of how I frame religion, how I teach religion, and it's a weird one. Like you lose a lot of teachers because a lot of teachers went through the system I went through. You had to have religion as a thing to teach, and some of those teachers now are just teaching religion. So you take that away, you've got a whole problem. What do we do with these teachers? Because like, are they going to retrain? Are they going to switch to another thing? Now, in one sense, there is a thing I heard about a few months ago. It's not an educate together, which is like if I can go through what educate together is if you don't know what educate together.
I have a vague idea, but let's define it in case
Yeah.
anybody hasn't the
So
Scooby.
government schools, ETB schools, educate together are kind of I'm sure the tree system we have. ETB is like Education and Training Board, so they have their own set of schools. ETB is after it. ETB, DDL, ETB, so that's Dublin and Dunleary is that one. So they have their own branch. They're like the plain government for us. And then you've got government schools, like just schools with different names or whatever name, they're just a government school. And then you've got Educate Togethers as well. So they're under a different ownership, but Educate Togethers don't have the religion structure that we would have. So there's already a difference. Um, they would have, is it like ethics and morality? And I think they have one other one and they switch it like that. So if you took religion out of it, that's probably what would swap in.
Okay. It would still
But
be some sort of a moral framework education and a vague idea of what a good or bad person is.
exactly. So you might call it philosophy, you might call it ethics, you might call it morality. I forget the phrasing of it. I've never worked in an educate together. So that is what it is. Uh, In one sense, now I'm not the biggest like we all need to know mad stuff about a religion, right? But if you look at history, every war was basically religion.
Yeah.
I don't think you can name a war that wasn't caused by maybe an ideology because it wasn't exact religion, but like it was a belief system of how things should be, and that person used that power to do this. So even if you want to do that, and I get what you're saying, I just don't think it should ever leave because it is a huge part of history. So even if we take it, it shouldn't be right. We're all Christian. We're all shouldn't be that. That's faith formation, which is what it sort of used to be when you had full control from the Catholic Church and they wanted that. It shouldn't be faith formation, but at the same time, like in that book, The Escaping Flatland is like people lost spiritual connection. People lost awe experiences because they're just stuck in their phones and they're stuck in all these things. They're not looking for adventure and they're trying to find that. So if you put it back in, I think dismissing one of the biggest factors that has influenced the entire world over history, it's a weird thing to get rid of if you ask me. But in the way it is now, I do think it probably will change. And there is a thing of like some course or someone wrote a scheme of work for like a different version, which is like educate togethers. It's not all educate togethers that they're trying to do in another one. I don't have the specifics. I can't say it exactly for you, but there is one or two people apparently in the framework of what it would be. And like you do hear about it in schools, they're kind of becoming studying classes rather than like non-religion classes. And I don't think it could change the entire culture. But like if you learn philosophy, like that golden mean idea, amazing. And like if you have like a book like The
Yeah.
Four Agreements, um Tuesdays with Maury. I don't know if you know these books. The Alchemist. Have you ever read any of these books? I can summarize them real quick.
Literally looking at my bookshelf over there.
That's all right. But like
Paulo Coelho. What a guy.
yeah, Pound Coelho, amazing. And but like, all of these things, if we learn anything, it's just learning about teachings. But then because the way the world is, like religion is being questioned a lot, but there's still amazing teachings in them. And I think if you focused on what those were and just made a massive curriculum of this is what we should learn, like parents are looking for their kids to become better people. There's a lot of wisdom in all of this stuff. Even if you take out the whole, yeah, we had everything happen with religion, and geez, that's a million podcasts sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, what I do as the books I'm doing are Tuesdays with Maury, which is Maury and this other character is in it. Maury is one that's diagnosed with as ALS, so he's like degenerative disease. But he has this perspective on life that is basically like challenging everything that's in the modern world. And he's like, oh, we don't have to have a lot of things. We can just have experiences with people, all kind of very slow life stuff. Mitch, his friend, who was like doing the corporate, the rat race, all of that stuff, all the heavy, like I grind and grind and grind. I don't sleep. I make money. He comes to him every Tuesday because he's trying to like stay with his friend. But then Mitch is deteriorating, being like, "What is this? This is crazy. I hate this, but I need this money." He's describing all this, and then more, he just tells him all this wisdom. And like, I'm doing that book with them, and just be like, right, what can we learn from this? And I give them prompting questions. There's a lot of like, but I'm also like, I don't know how to get through to them. Like, this is actually a pretty cool lesson. This is something they should take into account. And some of them are, to be fair, but there's a bit of a consensus of like what we even doing here anyway. So if you get rid of religion, it will be a huge thing because what do you put in its place? Like, what do the kids see as purposeful? But do the kids really know what is good for them? Would be my second question. You know?
Arguably
Um,
not at
yeah,
the early ages, but I
yeah,
would also kind of think of it from the perspective because you mentioned we could replace it with more maths or more English or any of that. If I look back to my school days, I think I had 2, maybe 3 religion periods a week in secondary school. We had a school chaplain, so it was probably a more religious school than the average one. But having those 2 or 3 40-minute periods across the week where we weren't doing something academically focused
yeah,
kind of lets your brain relax a little bit,
yeah,
takes the pressure, takes the gas off, but there's still some structure and some learning that
yeah.
maybe makes you better at settling into doing the maths and the English and the whatever other stuff that's more mentally taxing.
Ah, and what is
So
that?
I could see an argument for maybe not removing religion, but maybe reframing it as a subject to also include philosophy.
Yeah, which is they have I could probably do it. I'd have to do some research, but they have a thing that it's hard to organize, but it's the thing they tried to set up for the junior cycle called a short course. And you get like a little reference that you did the short course after you do the junior cycle, where it's a few weeks of intense on something, and there is a philosophy one, which is probably
Cool.
like
Would
talking
give them the
about all that.
opportunity.
Yeah, so like Aristotle stuff. It's just a nightmare to organize logistically for a school because you kind of have to swap a lot around to make it sustainable. But I think it is something like that because, as I said, it is a very loaded conversation. Like, I mean, religion, there's 50 million things you could talk about from angles.
Well,
Um,
as we
but
said
at the
as
same
well, it's been
time,
the cause of basically every war. So discussing removing it from schools,
it's the same.
it
Like,
could cause a war.
but 3 years ago, like they were talking about taking history from the junior cycle, and I was like, "What is the line you know about history? We learn from history. Like we learn what not to
Yeah,
do from history. If people didn't know about the extreme version, if people didn't know about Hitler and then heard about that, they might think that was a normal thing. And why didn't we do that? Like, so
that's a thing in Japan apparently. They don't
the
teach
history,
World War II, that aspect of World War II history in Japan. There was somebody that went around as a social experiment showing pictures of Hitler to random people on the street and being like, "What do you think of this guy?" And they're like, "Oh, he's very well dressed." And you're
yeah.
like,
Well, I
"You know
suppose
who he
that,
is?" And I'm like,
yeah,
"No, what are you
yeah,
talking about?"
yeah, yeah.
And even
It's
showing to some people a swastika and them not registering as to what it is, they're like, "That's that symbol in the temple for good fortune," which is kind of nice that that's how they register that symbol.
yeah,
But that these areas of Japan where they're not teaching that in school, these people walk around being like, "Oh yeah, I could put a swastika on my book because I want good fortune,"
yeah, yeah,
without anybody realizing what's up. But
yeah.
I guess with the religion coming out of secondary school, I would have concern on it. Obviously, I'm biased because I've had my return to Christianity recently, but I always have seen the benefit in religion. I would have more concern on it leaving primary school, being that
Exactly.
obviously in a Catholic Ireland where people still do the communion, the confirmation, that's part of your growing up in a Catholic based
Big
school.
experience. The big experience, yeah. And it's like, as you said, it's just a reframing, but it's also an accepting, like, we are a Catholic country as much as they've done weird stuff. And it's the reason we have boys and girls schools and less mixed schools. Like,
Yeah.
you have to accept stuff. And like being in the present makes a lot of sense. Like, if we just what's right now and what can we do right now as a parent. So I don't like to live in what I call sort of the Joe Duffy sphere. Like, so you're antagonizing everything basically. Like, you didn't like that. Well, you didn't like that Mary. What did you think of that Mary? Now that's not very nice, is it? Ah, that's horrible. Sort of energy. So like, what can we do? you decide what's good for your family and what can you do and what is going to happen with that. Because like you make
which
your choice.
I think nicely segues us into something I'm very selfishly excited to talk to you about.
Go for it.
Me and my partner are not married yet. We will be, in theory, by the end of the year, early next year. And then we're making some babies, and we're having a lot of the conversations about how we're going to raise them.
Congratulations.
And thank you very much. And the way that we are planning to bring them up is with homeschooling. So we've been doing a lot of digging into what that looks like.
Yeah, yeah.
But I thought selfishly, what a great opportunity to talk to a professional educator and ask, what's your opinion on homeschooling? If a parent came to you tomorrow to listen, I'm going to pull Stephen because we'll use him as the imaginary character for all of your stories.
Just like,
I'm
yeah, yeah,
I'm
casually,
pulling Stephen
Stephen.
out of school. I'm gonna
Right.
homeschool him. What
Mm,
do you think?
yeah. There's just a few considerations. And as I said, you can pick what you want to do. It's what's the result of that going to get you? There's a few things you have to think of randomly. I don't know how much you're in it. I know TUSLA are the organization for like over kids and how the education for them and the safety of them and stuff. If there's something wrong, like I've had stuff where students would write an explicit like suicide story or a drinking or a violence in the house story. I have to report that as someone that we call a mandated person to our principal who will send it on to TUSLA and stuff like that. But that organization, don't tell them alone, but you have to register with them that you're homeschooling your kid and they could possibly come and assess you at some stage. I don't just don't as a random heads up thing. Um, the things to consider, unless you're like if you're fine financially or one of you can stay home and do it, that's the thing. And when you get early on, like maybe primary school, it could be easier. We have to think about all the subjects you're gonna have to do and the capacity of doing that is kind of the biggest things I think of. But outside of that, I could see why you want to do it. There's some parents that come to us and we don't like this situation. I think there's a huge thing to be said, and a few version of addressing this issue. I think it's fine. Like what is the social and community side of your kid, and you don't know if your kid's going to be more introverted or socially prone to doing things. So you'll have kids that maybe if you had an introverted kid, perfect. But if you have a very social kid, and then obviously the homeschooling thing could be an issue. So there's a few things to think about. And then you've a lot of like I went to Aiden's CBS and like an Aiden's man was like a phrase some of our teachers used, came back as an Aiden's man because it was an all boys school. Like there's kind of an identity in that as well. And it's just all the things to think about. As I said, you can do it. I've seen it being done and it's perfectly fine. But there's a few things to think about like that because the perception of some homeschooled people is like, oh, they're a bit odd. But I could see a lot
Yeah,
of
like
benefits in
growing
it
up,
if it
that
works
was
in them.
nearly an insult. It's like, oh, there's the homeschool kid.
Now listen, there is a big thing as well, and if you want to touch on a small bullying thing, you've your own agency, and the ultimate thing about that I say to kids is anything that anyone is calling you is a reflection of what they believe about themselves. So if you get to that and the kid's fine, you can have a very productive kid. If you have the social part of it and those parts of it covered financially, that's good. The capacity of what you're gonna have to do. The one other thing is like you're going to have to be teacher, you're going to have to be administrator, you're going to have to be principal, you're going to have to be all of those things. Now, if you're great with that pressure, this is me just pitching on the things. I'm not bashing it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Just the ideas to keep in mind. If you have that and are able to do that, you can be an interesting kid. I'm coming from the kid that was a bit different, not homeschooled, but like was a bit different. I think that you can place some power on that. And like you're coming from the space where you're like quite emotionally aware and all of those things. I think you'd be a good person to put that all of that on, all of that wisdom. But I don't know the stats of how it goes, but like to put that wisdom on a kid, then have them be in a space where stuff will be annoying, people will be annoying, it's gonna be a bit crazy, shit will happen, and then they come back to you. I don't know which one would be better. And it might be just judging on the kid. If you're an introspective kid, hey, you could do that with him, but then how do we socialize him? If he's really social, it might not go well. So it's just a thing about that time.
Yeah, it's a thing that we, in theory, really want to do because we feel it'll give us an opportunity to raise them more consistently with the values we consider to be part of who we are and how we want them to grow up. We've been looking down the rabbit hole of the resources that can help because obviously me and Anya, neither of us are qualified educators, but there is programs to help deliver programs.
Yeah,
There is networks, and a lot of our social circle are the similar thought process. So you can
yeah,
kind of have like kids that meet up for different things to have the socializing.
yeah.
which is also a worry because I'm like, would I have enjoyed my whole friend circle being my parents' friend circle's
Yeah,
kids? I'm like,
yeah,
maybe not.
yeah,
But I'm biased on the side of, in theory, my kids will get involved in sports, in dance, in whatever type of group activities that lights up their fire, where they'll get the social from that. We'll have kids on the road, different type of things. Like my best friend from growing up, we were in entirely different schools and we just happened to bump into each other on the street, lived 2
yeah.
roads off from each other.
Nice.
We went to school together for 1 year together because he
No
moved
way.
from the old school he did and we were in 6th class, but in 2 opposite classes.
Yeah,
So even because candidly, the homeschool piece initially came from Anya. I was like, "Yeah, we can do school and be grand," and then she brought it up, and I'm like, seems like a lot of work." But I considered it more, and the worry I had when she first brought it up was, how will I have a best friend? And then I realized my best friend is not from school.
yeah, yeah. There's absolutely a space for it. I think there's a theory as well. So like, I'm not sure if you're talking about homeschooling the whole way through education, because that would be a lot of pressure to understand all of the subjects. Like I know my subjects, but you throw maths at me, some like second year comes to me sometimes when I'm in learn support classes, and they're like maths homework. I want some help with it, and I'm just like, shit. I'm like,
You're like,
damn,
I'm
how do
not
I
your
not
guy.
know this? Yeah, how do I not know second year maths? Like, um, but at the same time, there is a big thing to be said. If you wanted to do, I don't know about big thing to be said. Like a lot of this is people might be like, oh, homeschooling's weird. Like, if you're open to it, you want to do it. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You just have to take things into consideration that the school will do a lot for you, but you have to take them into consideration. But there is a theory. I might be completely butchering which guy this was, but there was a guy, it might have been John Locke or some, it might have been someone else, but he had this whole theory that kids shouldn't go to school academically until they're like 7 or 8. So, because like in that time, you've got a big chunk of, and there is a thing to be said about like by the time they come to us in secondary, we're only doing 5 to 8% sort of adjustments in most kids. Sometimes there's bigger ones we can have a bigger influence on, but like until you're 12, like that's formative sort of years, like, and there's a lot to be said. If you took a big chunk of that and you put in your values, that could be a possible thing. Like you can make it
Yeah,
a
it is a
kid that would
complete
go,
different trajectory for who the kid becomes when they become an adult.
because like it is a thing now. If you can do it, it could be a thing. And that theory has proven a lot in a few different places, and has been a lot proven. And that education was very much like go out into nature. Oh, what's the cause and effect of that? Oh, if you jump, like if you want to get as simple as possible, jump in a puddle. What's a puddle do? And you can just explore the world. And I get that in some sense. And I think primary school now, this one I'm not a primary school teacher, but I have heard they've gone a bit more to like play education. So learn through experience of playing a game, which is good as well. Now we have a bit of gripe with it as English teachers because I haven't seen how much it's there, but it does feel like the writing is not as good with us. So I'm like, are you doing a bit too much play? And I'd appreciate some more of that by the time they get to
Yeah.
us. But
Like, can you teach
it's
them
it's a
some more
negotiation.
fundamental, please?
It's a negotiation. Like I do think it's a good thing, but at the same time, we need to be able to do the skills that we need to have at certain points. But then the ultimate one was like, as a colleague of mine pointed out, um, that if you go to the leaving cert, you're never going to write as much as you do in the leaving cert ever again, and maybe ever.
Yeah. Like,
But I was
I
also,
told you a story in our pre-pod chat
yeah,
that
yeah,
I had an English teacher who was really formative in making me enjoy the act of writing because he took time to get to know everybody in the class as to what we actually cared about
but
at the
yeah,
time. Because my bodybuilding love,
yeah,
he's like, "Right, you wanna be a bodybuilder. Do you know much about Arnold Schwarzenegger?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
yeah,
I've read his book. I've listened to everything about him. I've seen all these different stuff." And he's like, "Right, you're gonna put me together an essay about his life, and then I'm gonna teach you how to edit that to work for whatever question we get in the Leaving Cert." I got B1 in Leaving Cert English. I dug in and I did maybe 16 pages
yeah,
of writing about an inspirational person in my life. I was like,
yeah.
"Ah."
Annie,
Immediately, I come out and I'm like, "Jimmy," because the teacher's name, Mr. McGovern, he let us call him
yeah,
Jimmy.
yeah,
I,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
pegged it down in school, be like, "Jimmy, it worked."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, the Arnie press, baby, the Arnie press.
Oh, that's
Love it.
actually my least favorite exercise.
Really? Yeah, yeah. No, it's just because
From
it's
a
an
joint
Arnie.
stability perspective, I'm like, "There's too much moving, we're losing the shoulder." It's one of his 2 missteps. Well, maybe 3 missteps.
Oh,
His other
okay.
misstep was knocking up the maid. The other misstep was trying to vilify steroid use in California, where I'm like, "You built your career on steroids, man."
Hang on a minute. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's an interesting one. No, it's just one of the exercises I remember. I haven't done it much. Like, as I said, mostly a CrossFit gym for most of my life. So, like, it wasn't really a thing. But one or two times they did it, which was interesting.
Yeah, it's a when it comes to loading exercises to build some tissue, it was done in theory so that he could get some extra bicep work without actually just doing a bicep
Working.
curl. Because when
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
loaded, you're getting a little bit more work on it, but it means you're not really focused on your bicep, you're not really focused on your shoulder. You're kind of
yeah.
this in between space
Okay.
where bodybuilding is more focused on focused tension on one area.
Yeah, yeah. Makes sense.
But who am I to argue against Arnold with his peaks of bicep that are even today nearly
Heaps.
unbeatable for the shape?
Yeah, heaps.
Um, yeah, like that opportunity to be able to write that much passionately and excitedly in an exam was incredible. Now, the
Yeah.
framing of the homeschool conversation, it kind of is going to depend. That's poor English on my part, but it will somewhat depend on what vocation the kid decides he wants to go into or she decides to go into. Because if we get to the stage where they're 12, 13, they're kind of the first year, second year type of area of life, and they're like, all I want to do is be a lawyer. And we're like, listen, you're going to have to get some serious leaving cert exam results. Let's put you into a private school and make it happen. And that's if we stay in Ireland. Because the other thing I brought up with you in a previous conversation, there's a school in America called Alpha School.
Yeah.
Such a like gun ho here for the boy's name.
Yeah.
Actually founded by a lady
Yeah.
who was an educator, had a daughter that was incredibly academic and loved school. And she had a 2 or 3 year period where she came home upset and hating school because of the way the system was putting her through to not encourage her skill sets. And this lady's like, we can do this better. An alpha school, incredibly expensive. It will cost about £250,000 to bring youngest year up to finishing school per kid. So right there, I'm like, need £500,000 set aside for education.
Yeah.
But their curriculum of every day coming in, they don't come in at 7 a.m. They come in at 10 a.m. Gives kids time to actually wake up, move, and do some things. When they get in, there's a morning hype up briefing of like, let's celebrate these kids. Gets them into their hyper focused learning phase of the day, which is some AI assisted with teachers to focus on the academics. Then they're playing. They're outside, they're doing activities, they're eating, they're doing music, art, different things. Then they're switching into business mode where they teach them skills to build whatever business they want to build. And at the end of the primary school equivalent, they come out with a business. When they finish their final year of secondary school, they don't just create a theoretical business, they create a real business and they teach them how to make it make money. A couple of kids have made like 7 figure businesses as their final year projects. And
Damn.
I'm like, maybe this is a worthwhile investment.
Bing. Yeah. It's edu- the education space is weird. Um, I think in England it's the same thing. We're kind of similar to England sort of system in some ways. Uh, but there's always this weird thing of like, how much should we change and how much should
Yeah.
we push towards? And is baby steps the right answer? I will say there is a push for at least some of the schools I've been in. Um, but I also hear a lot of we are educating, or the system is being set up to educate for the lowest common denominator and not the highest achieving challenger. Um, so like in education, which is annoying. Like I know some parents who are in the school who have kids in primary school that are like their kids are really smart, love reading, but then they're reading. So the kid in the class that's the weakest, we only go to his pace. I'm like, okay, yeah, we need to cater for the weak kid, but like one of the coolest things about teaching, if you can get a kid that excel and they do something crazy, like some of the stuff that I'll give you a fun story actually, for a TY thing. And this is the example of I'd love to get this in education more, but also you hear a lot of like kids just coming in being like, oh, life is brutal. I don't know what to do. And I'm like, that's kind of a thing you have to get around, but that's a whole culture thing you talk about. But I think if you give them something that is worth doing or show the challenger why it's the thing to do, I think it can change. But I think that is from a parent's side as well. Like they need to make sure they're like, yeah, we need to go to school and stuff, but that's the whole thing. But the story of like trying to get them to do something challenging, my two favorite stories are I did a TY English thing and it was all about I made it all about in a sense it could be like a business thing like you're going on Shark Tank. I made a discursive essay module. Discursive essay being like you take the arguments of two sides and try and find where people meet and say the arguments, but you don't take a side. Like this and this is the whole thing. So this could be a solution, this could be a solution. That's your discursive essay, which is on the Leaving Cert. So it's like learning the skill of how to write that in TY. That's kind of how we work TY. And then when you go into fifth and sixth year, you've got that skill. And it was hilarious. I had them come in and I had a whole structure of like how you present an argument, but you had to give me the argument and the more ludicrous or the more engaging it is, the more points you will get. So there had to be audience participation of at least two other students that weren't in your group. Everyone in the group had to participate in some way. And I gave a whole list. There was a whole like big list of stuff. And it was just like, and I can't be Liverpool are better than United or something. So it had to be something a bit out there. It couldn't be
Comes up
something
with a
very
bit
basic.
more skin in the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, and you couldn't look at the screen as well. So, like, it couldn't be just, "Oh, yeah, I, Liverpooler," and you couldn't be like that because that's if I looked at over there and given you like, it's not great. It's not good teaching or communication. And, I had 2 groups come in and do something deadly. One group came in and brought in an old Nintendo 64, had Mario Kart on one side of the screen and had the Wii Mario Kart on the other side of the screen, while they explained the graphics and the differences between Wii and Nintendo 64 and the stories of how they happened and why they believe Wii Mario is deadly and there's more potential to be made in it, all while lads were just doing laps. Lads were going up, oh, deadly on this character. I go, oh, yeah, yeah, oh, deadly. And they were like, as they left, they'd put a fake mic up to them. All right, lads, I've played both of the games. Which one did you find better and why? And then that would be a pause point. I'm like, that's so cool, like, to get lads to set that up and do that thing. And the other one was, they were so excited to do this they put it up on the board and it was like, what's the best biscuit, the Dunkin' tea? And they had a cart outside with hot, like boiling hot water and like 6 different biscuits. And they like did all, who wants a taste test? Right, you're going to taste test these two, right? We're going to get a consensus. We've only 8 biscuits and all this crack. It was good crack. And it was just, it's such a cool thing to be able to do and have that experience. And like there is trying to be a push to have that side of education be there, but there's always that fight with how do we push that part of education and developing a person and those skills? Because like at the end of the day, you want to be a lawyer. Like if you wanted to be a lawyer and just went into school to do that, surely we're just aiming for 625 points, and that's a skill and a memory test in a way. So it's a weird balancing, is all
Kinda
I'm
seems
saying.
like it needs to be 2 education systems in tandem, because you need the memory capacity to pass those exams and do all of those things, but you also need all the skills you just described, because 'cause you've taught somebody to be able to stand at the top of a room, argue a case, present both sides of it, and keep it engaged, which if you don't have those skills, doesn't matter how good you are at retaining information to pass an exam, you're not gonna win a court case.
Yeah, that's
You need
true.
a bit of flair, you need a bit of pizzazz to get the
Yeah,
jury to hear what you're saying about your client. You need that pizzazz and interview skill to be able to actually get the jobs.
yeah. It's true. And like, I don't know if it's a general thing. I don't know if because I switched schools, but like my current school is just a bit more, the kids are a bit more, we don't want to do stuff and there's less more like shouting out stuff. Don't get me wrong, it's slightly easier, but like I kind of thrived on the shouting out stuff when it wasn't too bad because you could challenge it and you could be like, oh, why'd you think that? That's mad. Like, oh, you're a bit of a dope for saying that. Why'd you say like even that sort of stuff? Now, that wasn't all boys' school. I said that one in. So like they'll get it. If I
Yeah,
did that to
there's
the
always
girl, it
gonna be
wouldn't
different
exactly,
dynamics.
yeah,
It's where even in the gym, like if I've got a men's only class, a women's only class, or a mixed class, I can deliver the exact same program to all 3 groups, and it's gonna be an entirely different dynamic across all of them. Because no
yeah.
matter what age you are, us lads act very different when we're alone in a room with no other ladies. And
Yeah,
then there's
you're
a
giving our
level of
secrets
performance.
away, that Matt. You're giving our
Yeah.
secrets away, Matt.
Well, I had to explain this to my group of ladies I coach for the gym. So
Mm,
it's not actually women's only, but it tends to be the demographic to pick the type of coaching that is. And at one point, one of them went, "What do you do apart from this?" I'm like, "Oh, well, I do men's coaching, and everyone in my main one-to-one program, we're all men. And they're like, that's very sexist. And I'm like, no, it's really not. It's that men act completely differently and more vulnerably when there's no women around, unless you're one-to-one with a woman. So a lot of people don't even see that change in dynamic of genders. Now we won't touch the topic of gender discussion in school because that one is probably way too loaded and I want to keep you employable.
Yeah. Well, it's the only thing I'd say is like that we educate for the person. It's not me trying to be like PC or anything, but like there is natural differences. Like I have a niece and a nephew. They're only like 1 year and 2 or 3 months apart. Um, like they're both brought up in the same household. This could be the same in any household. Same people, same household, same influences. And he's gone towards Ninjago, Legos, and all this fighting stuff. And he's trying to wrestle me a bit more and do all of those things. Whereas like she's going to like unicorns and dresses and just wants to try and loads of dresses. And we're just like, we did nothing. Like genuinely, my brother and his girlfriend are very good for like just put that there and let them see what they go towards. And they very naturally went towards it. Now I will say it's like educating boys and girls in mixed schools are different dynamics. And female intersexual dynamics at teenage level,
Yeah,
like
minefield.
crazy. Having to navigate that is nuts. Like the amount of birdies, the amount of complications, the amount of stuff where, like, especially when a girl comes to you, like I've had a friend that worked in an all girls school that was like a tutor, and then girls were coming to him saying, "Oh, she did this stuff," and it was very petty, but they felt very intense about it. And then he was like, "I'm also a lad commenting on these girls having this thing. I don't know if it's a case, and it does happen. You hear a lot about it with lads, and a lot. I know one or two that left like girls' schools because of this weird dynamic, because they're just like a young male teacher, and there's weird things of like they try to get your
Uh,
attention."
In 2026, like that has to be terrifying as a somewhat like you're a young, attractive, in shape man walking into a room of young girls who at some point might be like, Mr. Bridgman, how you doing? You're like, don't do that because I
Yeah,
don't want to get pegged with that brush.
yeah. Oh,
And I even think back to when I was in school, like when we would fancy one of the lady teachers and we might be like, all right, miss, and how awkward that is for her.
yeah. It's a funny one as well. We had one or two teachers like that in our school, and it was like looking back on it now, the lad saying stuff, you're like, "Oh yeah, gas," but then like now being on the other side, she was coming out and just saying, "Oh, those kids again being annoying. How do you manage that?" It's a weird one, but everything is understanding how to navigate the world. So that's one of the sides of education now. As I mentioned, with like trying to get more money for extracurriculars, or even just set it up so you could do extracurriculars. Like if you had half days on Wednesdays, like if you switched around the allocation hours, you could have every club you would want set up for like half of the half day, and you have to go to it. And that's just like something we
Yeah.
do. And then like that's just a thing we do. You don't go to, not that you don't go to competitions, maybe you do, but like that could be a thing we do. There's a thing called well-being hours. Maybe that could be that. Because like experiential learning is more than anything. And I think it's a bit weird. Now there is some great curriculum coming out. Some of the people in the school I met actually are some of the people involved. And there is really cool stuff for like how to communicate, stuff about like harassment, sexuality, boundaries women have to have because of men, but men stuff, all like stuff you have to do that you'll have to deal with, um like contraception, all these different things. And there is some cool like stuff of how to say it and all different things, and very funny things as well. One of the girls in my school actually made, do you know the game 30 seconds? She made that for STDs.
Like a student or like a teacher?
No, a teacher that was in a, so she went to the year course to like not learn but get involved with on a master's level of teaching like relationships, sex education, social, physical, and that sort of stuff. And yeah, as a project, they were like, "Oh, make an activity for them to engage with on one of the topics." And she made the game 30 seconds, but it would be like I'd see chlamydia, and then I have to describe to you everything about chlamydia without saying the word. You get to say the word, and then he'd be on board. He get scores and stuff. Um, so like, there's great stuff like that. I will say that, but it's also not that's exactly something you're gonna experience in school, but at the same time, if there was more time that kids could just go out and be kids, as you said, with those two classes, you could just relax a bit. And it's what kind of my point. I don't think you can really ask teenagers what's best for them. Like, there's some smart teenagers and smarter than me, like, but like in terms of experience and what's best for them, I don't think that's around that they're amazing at, because there's so much stuff that it would be nice for them to do. But me being a teacher, I'm like, it's not going to be the kind thing to do. It's raising any kid of like, if I let you eat chocolate, if I let you eat ice cream, if I let you stay up late, if I let you be on your bed till 4 a.m. in the morning, they're like, oh, but I wanted to do that. And I'm like, that's great for me because I have fun doing that. And you're like, you're not really seeing the big picture here.
Yeah.
Um,
You're having fun, but you're having fun and completely losing your discipline and not knowing what you should be doing with your life.
exactly. Yeah. So, and then my whole maybe encompassing thing, as I said, we could talk forever on this, would be like, what are we doing if we're not preparing them for what's coming after it, after they leave secondary school?
Yeah, because at the
And
end of the day, if every teacher made their goal, let's prepare this young man or young woman for what's going to happen the day after the leaving cert's finished and they're now out of the system, to make them a competent human being that can navigate the world, it'd be a much, I think, a much better world, but it'd be a much more positively talked about education system.
now, in saying that, my phrase for it is actually I put in when anyone asks it, and I've had to put it on some documents, is like an autonomous human. So like you
Yeah.
automatically take care of yourself, kind of an idea. Um, but the weird thing about it is, and I don't think it's discussed enough, or people know about this, and some parents come in and have weird concepts of their kids that they're like a 50% kid. And we know that. And now listen, we'll always try and improve a kid, don't get me wrong. But if evidence shows in the results they're about a 50% kid, there's no point in getting your kid boatloads of grinds, boatloads of stuff. A lot of grinds as well, like they go above above teachers' heads and get grinds because they don't think they're doing enough in class. And yeah, there's one or two cases of teachers that were there for a long time that didn't do as much in class and maybe needed a bit more help. But like, if a kid is only going to get 50% and that's their max effort, steady, they're showing up. Let them do that. But you have some parents that come to parent teacher meeting and say stuff, being like, "No, we need them to get 80, 85." I'm like, and
Like, it's not going to happen.
it's
Let's spend
weird for
more
me to
time
say,
developing other skills for them.
yeah, and it's weird for me to say, and it's a hard one. Like, do you tell them, be like, listen, his capabilities probably that. We'll keep challenging, we'll keep doing it, but especially with like English and maths and some of these things, and when there's more like there's a lot of skill involved when you get to higher end stuff. A lot of kids I could get to 50, 60, maybe even 70, but when you're talking 70 plus, there's going to be a lot of work, or there's a lot of understanding or processing that we need to
The
have.
thing is, not everybody is academically inclined, and that can be completely okay. Like, I have a good friend that runs a massive roofing organization, makes an enormous amount of money, incredible at building roofs. He got kicked out of school in primary school.
Yeah,
He didn't
and it
get to
happens,
do leaving cert,
and it
and he just
happens.
figured out the vocation.
Like, and it's one of those weird things as well that we have to comment on the things that people do after they leave, and they leave early. Like my dad didn't do what would have been the intercert in his time. If you're aware of how the structure worked, it was called the intercert. He didn't
Yeah.
even do that, and he was a successful, sorry, was it welder or was it one other thing? It was working with metals for a bit. Didn't like that. Wasn't a great lifestyle. Started his own painting and decorating company. Worked in Canada with a lad for a while when there's nothing in Ireland. Like figured life out completely fine and very well. Like has his own house, has two kids, put them through school, gave them everything they needed in terms of money and everything. Was there for us as well. It's not like he was grinding all the time. He was good. Like he was a good dad. He was present and all. So, I mean, if you go from he has, oh, hopefully I don't get this wrong, 7 siblings, and you came from that, they barely had anything. Like there would be like we'd sleep in the same room, all 7 of us, and we'd have a curtain for the one girl, and they came from that. And he has his own house, which is in, I think, like, I'm not gonna say where it is, but like his own
You're in a
house
nice
on
area,
a
like.
road that would go for like a good amount of money now, and saved a lot. He left before he even did the junior cert. I was like, there's not like there's shame in it. There is an education system for certain paths, but there's not as well. But where do we find that line? When's a kid gonna go and we're gonna be like, yeah, he'll do something like that? It's a weird thing to negotiate.
Yeah. But look, we will talk about education for hours and hours and hours.
You could
So I want to pull us into a closing arc
go for it.
of you giving me some quick fire. best takeaways for any parents or prospective parents who listen to this on how they can support their kids better in school? Because I don't think we could make any changes to the education system on a podcast. But not yet. We'll see. Maybe we elect you to some board and we can do some stuff. But for now, what would be like the top three things that a parent can do to support their child getting the most out of the education system?
Um, I think
And let's
presence
use the keep it simple framework.
I think presence in their experience and their academia, pushing them to do their thing that makes them show up. Like, if they're present in my class and if they're trying their best and if they bring themselves with their equipment every day, perfect. I'll get them to wherever they can get to. But the amount of people that aren't doing that from a very young age, the more reading, because if you can process stuff with reading, absolutely the best. If you're talking young kids, more reading from like even in the belly, every study says like it's amazing. Like being able to process that earlier and earlier. Math stuff, I'm not so much on, but the reading stuff and being present with their experience and their academia, I think is brilliant. And having some sort of ritual every day, I think be funny. Like if they check a view of everything for work, I check a view of everything for work and stuff like that. Just getting that experience with that. If you can do those two things and they come to me, I will get your kid to a very good level. So that's how I'd say for that.
Cool. Two nice simple ones. What is your biggest takeaway for somebody that hears this? What do they need to go? I'm assuming you don't have anything to promote outside the fact that you're an incredible teacher. You can't say where you teach, but what can somebody take away from this? What do you want them to read, see, or explore?
I think if you're looking to summarize education, we have this idea in education of a lifelong learner, and they're trying to put that on kids. And I think the lifelong learner thing is like you should always be trying not something new, but trying to structure yourself and be able to learn like new things on the flies because things will change. I think like if you can communicate well and challenge, are you communicating well? If you can, are you showing up for the best you can with other people? In terms of like communication and how you lead your life and being competent. Like if you can challenge those two things at any age, I'd say you're going to get better. One of the things I've done with like food and stuff, we take that example and like gym stuff. Like I was always over 97 kgs, 98 kgs, went up to 105 and it was not muscle for like years. It's only in the last like, was it 6 years ago I got down really low and I'm really low now. And it's from those challenges that like I took that. I was trying to be competent in something I wasn't, but I went for it and I slowly got better at it. If you can do that, push your kid to do that and be present more so than like scrolling all the time, which took me forever as well. I'm bad at it too. But like
I'm a
presence,
pest for it. I'm
yeah.
bad for scrolling.
Yeah. So if you can go with your kids, especially because I think it's trying to model that, like presence, confidence, and trying to be like okay with making mistakes and being confident. If you can try those three things, especially with kids, because I make that a partnership. Like that's one of the things I'm excited about. I'm not near having kids, but it's one of the things I'm excited about having that experience, getting to show them with them and experience that. And I think if you hit those three things and push your kid to hit those three things, and it doesn't have to take a long time. Like say, like we're gonna have a 10-minute, 20-minute check-in. Like clean the kitchen with me. Let's clean the room for 20 minutes, put on some banging tunes and talk about it. Like that experience and having someone like that that's next level for me. And even if I had a partner, do that with your partner. Like, these things translate very easily in a lot of different ways.
I love it. Thank you very much for giving me your time today, Connor.
Thank
It's
you, Matt. It's
brilliant
been a
having you
pleasure.
on, talking about all of this, and I hope anyone that hears any of this will I maybe link your Instagram. That's cool
Yeah,
with you.
absolutely can do.
I'll put your Instagram in the show notes so that if anybody wants to maybe reach out and ask you an education related question,
For sure.
I hope you wouldn't mind that you might be
That's cool.
able to steer someone in the right direction if they're a bit confused.
Absolutely.
This has been episode 9 of We Need to Talk. We're getting through the numbers now. Connor being fourth guest.
Yeah, we're gonna get Chris Williamson. We're gonna get him.
He's on the list, although his business partner might be more on my radar now. I'm pretty determined to talk to James Smith.
James Smith. Oh yeah, you had the Instagram thing, right?
Yeah. We'll make it
Yeah,
happen. We'll have more downloads than him on one episode, and then we're there.
nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's
you
good, man.
guys that are listening slash watching, you will see me and hear me again next Friday. This episode will not be up this week. It'll be up next week. Unless you're listening to this now, in the future, 10 years on, and it's the
It's very
beginning of
weird.
this show.
Very outdated.